Hi there. I will say a few words about equipment, about recording and also collections, which I find are the core elements that teachers now need to master in the new paradigm for higher education. And we start with the recording, and people have a lot of experience, of course, with this now. They have either done live and then recorded, or recorded separately, or combined the two where they record when they go live. Personally, I prefer to record in advance and maybe edit some if necessary, and then use online to be more conversational with the participants, if that is possible. So I'm sitting now in this kind of studio in my home with this kind of lamps that is bought in IKEA. What is important is to have a very good microphone and a good camera, which is positioned just in front of me and in front of a bigger screen. Here illustrated with a portable, but now I use a bigger screen, so that when I look at the screen and I see the slides, I can also see myself. And the slides are on the background of me with a green cloth, as I will show you. So here you see this green cloth that is put up behind me. And these are the items that we use. You can buy that for a few thousand kroner if you want to have a reasonably good studio equipped in your home or in your office. And of course, you can have more, and many people have more studio facilities with dedicated people, but that is really not necessary for this kind of straight lectures. So Zoom, as I'm using now, is a perfect tool for recording the video. It's not an editor, but for recording, it's very good. Push the record button, stop the meeting, and the file is compressed and stored on your PC, and you can upload it to a repository, which I will talk about afterwards. Then, of course, you can use PowerPoint, and I advise as many as I can who don't want to go into all the details of all the many hundreds and thousands of software solutions that you can use, because PowerPoint has really quite a lot of the required tools for creating online lectures and materials for other kind of presentation. Not everybody are aware that you can sort of right-click the top menu and customize the ribbon. This change for each version of PowerPoint, but then you select the things you want to do, and you have the to record the slides. Of course, you have record the screen if you have some other screen that you would like to record. It might be a website, or it might be something else that is out there, and then you can record audio and save that as a export to video. That's the same effect as with the Zoom, but Zoom is simpler. But this is perfectly possible also in PowerPoint. Now, I bring up this picture, which is for a recording in PowerPoint, and you can insert the recording inside the slide with other items. And the other very good feature about PowerPoint is that it has a strong visual editor. So here are different kind of image components that are put together. And over time, I've tried many kind of image editors, and I have found that for most purposes, the PowerPoint image editor is quite sufficient. And also, it's possible to collect pictures in a kind of directory structure in PowerPoint, so that you can sort of organize your material for retrieval later. So here we see that's these kind of folders, and in this case, an image which has many components stacked on top of each other, and it's possible to make a picture transparent, so you only see certain parts of it, and in this way you can create quite complex images. Now, recording sound, we can do that in both Zoom, but that is together with the video. You can do that as part of the video or separately in PowerPoint, but it's sometimes useful to have a proper recorder. Audacity is a free software that is very good, and you get this, in this case, 2 channels. And you can edit this by sort of dragging and selecting parts of the sound bite here, take away the all these things. You can strengthen or subdue the volume of the sound, etc., etc. That's also a good tool and well worth spending some time to learn how to do. But it's quite simple for elementary usage. And then we have for the mobile phone, which is quite useful to have a small sound recorder, and you can just hold the phone and record and then upload it from the phone to some repository, which is quite simple. And I commonly do that if I don't want to sort of bring out all the stuff with Audacity or on the computers and so on and so forth. If there's a small comment on the picture or just a sound file like we see here that is embedded in the page, then I upload it to the repository, and I don't go into the nitty-gritty of how that command is given here, but there is something called the audio element in HTML5, and the basic structure is like you see here, and you can embed the audio as long as it's available on the internet. Now, when we create all these things, we need to organize them, and many people, well, I guess most people have experienced that they had something somewhere and it's not so easy to retrieve it, particularly when you work with multimedia elements. Like in this case, this picture is made of 3 different pictures. There's one icon for the video, one icon for the sound, and then one picture from an album, and they are put together. And to build up a sort of collection of things that is relevant for your subject area, subject matter, and have that for reuse, then it's much, much easier to create the lectures or have something that you might use when you're doing an online interaction with your students, bring up some new stuff, and also when you develop materials for distribution before the meeting face-to-face or the seminar, whatever it might be. So in this case, the main collections that I'm working with is something called the Filmet, which is a video recording collection of short lectures that Oslo Metropolitan maintains. There are some 1,000 short lectures here. It's the biggest open repository in Norway. And this is quite important, that it should be open. So there's an issue about making this material openly available for everybody, and that we might discuss closer when that is appropriate. Another collection is based on HTML5 packages, which is basically made, or the framework is made by the Jubel company in Tromsø. But I put together a small repository for my own usage, because the classification system is very much geared to the things I'm working with. And then we have for online MOOCs or textbooks, what we call digitale læreverk in Norwegian, Bokskapet at Oslo Met, where we have complete collections of material within titles. It's a bit like textbooks, and it's a mix of textbooks and lecture notes, and I will talk more about that in another context. Another example from that Jubel is that you can also create slideshows with comments here. So in order to illustrate the point here, there's in this short presentation, there are some 40 elements, different elements, pictures, audio, etc., etc. And as already mentioned, to handle that, curate that, to give it identifiers that make it easy to retrieve, that's a core question in order to maintain a long-term, extensive development of e-learning resources. Let me take an example. Here we have a læringsutbyttebeskrivelse, that is the description of what you're supposed to learn in the subject. We go away from the sort of reading list and go towards points or items that students are supposed to learn. It's part of the European integration that the universities should exchange study programs, and then you have to know what the students are supposed to have learned. Now you go from there and into the table of contents on one of these online MOOCs, these textbooks. And then here's an example from a project they had with the colleagues in Ethiopia, where they have made some text and some images here from another page, and here's a video. And then it's very useful to have all these resources collated so that you have a collection of videos and pictures and the interactive learning objects, as they're called in that HTML5 I just mentioned. And then some interesting thing will happen, namely that you can go straight from the læringsutbytte, the LUB, and into a delimited part of the collection, which long-term, is my belief, will make it much easier to plan for development of the subject areas. So we can look at what students are supposed to learn and look at the resources available, and maybe start to discuss what kind of resources do we need to develop, and then put that into the web pages and the MOOCs, etc. To illustrate a little more, these are actually videos I have made since the pandemic started, the closure in 2020, on YouTube, which is a good place to store items. Here are another repository that I strongly recommend. It's called Cloudinary. It's free for personal use, and you can have a lot of stuff there, pictures, audio, whatever you can throw at the system. There's a limit on how big the file should be. In my case, there are some, let me see, 150 folders, so that I continuously classify material that I develop myself, and it's easy to retrieve. So that is more extensive than what you can do, for instance, in PowerPoint. And then I mentioned this HTML5 packages, which also has a folder structure. But here I made this my own, because it's not, in my view, strong enough as it is. They are developing something more there now. And then I can go and take a look at the different types. Our Gamoto, which are like, you have two pictures sort of superimposed, you can drag, and there might be two pictures from different timelines, from different times in history. Accordion is this kind of text that goes up and down. Course presentation is like a picture with some audio, or you can click at and get a lecture. Essay form is a free text form with student answer, and you can pre-program what kind of response they should have, depending on if they have certain keywords in their text, etc., etc. And then you can also classify according to the subject area. So that is basically it. Tools, editors for creating content, multimedia, rich text, and then a solid system for collecting and retrieving for reuse those resources.